There is a moment in your day more powerful than anything else you will face. A moment so quiet, most people overlook it, yet it holds the potential to reshape your destiny. It is the moment between sleep and movement, between opening your eyes and stepping into the world. That morning moment can change your fate, not because the sun rose differently, not because your circumstances improved overnight, but because in that moment you decide who you will be before life has the chance to decide it for you. Before the noise, before the messages, before the responsibilities, before the pressure, there is a sacred silence. In that silence, your future listens. In that silence, your mind is open and unguarded. In that silence, your inner voice carries more weight than at any other time of the day. What you say to yourself in that moment becomes the script your mind follows, the energy your body absorbs, the attitude your spirit adopts. That is why the morning is not just a transition from sleep to wakefulness. It is the birthplace of your identity each day. Most people lose the battle for their day before they even get out of bed. They wake up and instantly replay the fears they carried yesterday. They think of problems before possibilities. They let worry rise before wisdom. They let the past speak louder than potential. And without knowing it, they start their day in defeat. Not because life is hard, but because they never claimed their power when the day was still soft, still open, still theirs to shape. But when you take command of that morning moment, everything changes. When you rise and speak strength instead of stress, confidence instead of confusion, purpose instead of panic, you set a tone for your entire day. You align your emotions before the world has a chance to scatter them. You anchor your identity before challenges try to shake it. You choose the direction of your mind before the world tries to overwhelm it. The world does not decide your day, you do. The decision happens in that first quiet moment. This is where discipline is born. Not in the gym, not in the office, not in the middle of chaos. Discipline begins in the first conversation you have with yourself. When you tell yourself, get up, even when comfort pulls you back. When you tell yourself, I will show up, even when excuses whisper louder. When you declare, I am capable, even when doubt tries to settle in. That voice, that small internal push, becomes the foundation of who you become. The fate of your life is not determined by one giant decision. It is shaped by thousands of tiny internal choices, especially the choices you make before the world sees you. Destiny does not start when you walk out the door. It begins when you rise with intention. It begins when you declare who you are becoming. It begins when you choose faith over fear, strength over weakness, clarity over chaos. It begins in that delicate moment where no one is watching, but everything inside you is listening. When you own your morning, you own your mind. When you own your mind, you own your decisions. When you own your decisions, you own your direction. And when you own your direction, you own your destiny. People talk about fate as if it is something written in the stars, something out of their hands. But fate bends toward the person who rises with purpose. Fate responds to the person who speaks with intention. Fate changes for the person who refuses to start the day in defeat. So when you wake, don't rush into the world empty. Fill yourself first. Speak to yourself first. Strengthen yourself first. Before anyone else claims your energy, claim your identity. Before challenges test you, prepare your spirit. Before life asks anything of you, remind yourself of everything within you. That single moment, quiet, small, unseen, is where power is born. It is where change begins. It is where fate shifts, and it belongs to you. There's a moment, one quiet, simple moment between the alarm clock and the decision to rise. And in that moment lives more power than most people ever recognize. That small window, that breath between sleep and movement, carries the weight of your entire destiny. Because before the world speaks to you, before the notifications flash, before responsibility demands attention, before anyone judges or defines you, you speak to yourself. That first inner whisper, that first thought you allow can shift the trajectory of your entire life. Is the morning moment that can change your fate. Every single morning you awaken with a conversation already forming inside you. A conversation that decides whether you walk in confidence or collapse under pressure, whether you move with intention or drift through the day half alive, whether you stand in purpose or hide from possibility. That inner dialogue is not small, it is not trivial, it is not background noise. It is the architect of your emotions, the sculptor of your actions, the quiet director of your future. Most people lose the day before they even rise from the bed. They wake up and immediately replay yesterday's failures. They recall the voices that doubted them. They review the disappointments, the stress, the fear, and before their feet touch the ground, they have already surrendered, not to reality, but to internal conversation, because the battle is rarely out there. It is almost always in here, in the mind, in the whispers, in the private dialogue no one else hears. But when you shift that morning conversation, when you take authority over it, when you decide that your first voice will be a voice of strength, something in your life begins to realign. You don't need a new city, a new job, a new relationship, or a new opportunity to change your life. You need a new way of speaking to yourself. You need to rise and say, I am capable, I am guided, I am built for this. You need to speak into your spirit before the world attempts to drain it. You need to direct your mindset before circumstances attempt to distort it. You need to declare your intention before doubt attempts to rewrite your identity. This is not empty motivation. This is not positive thinking for the sake of sounding optimistic. This is spiritual engineering. This is emotional calibration. This is psychological authority. When you wake up and deliberately shape your internal conversation, you are not just preparing for the day. You are disciplining your destiny. You are teaching your mind what to see. You are instructing your emotions how to feel. You are telling your soul how to rise. And when you do that consistently, the world within you becomes stronger than the world around you. Suddenly, challenges look different. You don't shrink from difficulty. You grow into it. You don't fear opportunities, you claim them. You don't question your worth, you embody it. Because the voice within you becomes a guide instead of a critic, a coach instead of a tormentor. The truth is, your fate bends toward the voice you believe. If you wake up and believe the voice of fear, your day bends toward avoidance. If you believe the voice of inadequacy, your day bends toward hesitation. But if you believe the voice of strength, your day bends toward boldness. If you believe the voice of resilience, your day bends toward endurance. And if you believe the voice of identity, your day bends toward purpose. The reason the morning moment is so powerful is because it is the only moment when the world has not yet touched you. You are pure potential. You are unshaped clay. You are unwritten story. In that moment, you get to choose what narrative fills the page before life attempts to scribble on it. You get to choose the tone of the day. You get to choose the perspective, the attitude, the energy, and the atmosphere you walk with. And so each morning, before anything else, speak with intention. Remind yourself who you are becoming, not who you were. Remind yourself what you can do, not what you fear. Remind yourself what matters, not what distracts. Remind yourself that destiny listens to courage. Remind yourself that fate responds to faith. Remind yourself that the world rises to meet those who rise within themselves first. Because the first words you speak to yourself are the seeds you give your future to grow. The first words you speak each morning set the emotional climate of your entire day, long before you step outside, long before you answer a message, long before anyone else has the chance to influence how you feel or how you move. That early whisper, that quiet sentence you allow to echo inside your mind becomes the temperature of your spirit. It determines whether your heart walks into the day warm with hope or chilled by doubt. It determines whether your decisions come from clarity or confusion. It determines whether you carry peace or turmoil, confidence or hesitation, power or passivity. Most people underestimate that moment because they think the day is shaped by circumstances. But the truth is, the day is shaped by the tone you set before circumstances even arrive. When you open your eyes in the morning, your mind is in its most impressionable state. You are not yet filled with the noise of tasks, deadlines, conversations, or problems. You are not yet influenced by opinions, expectations, or external pressures. You are in a sacred window of vulnerability, a window where your internal language has the greatest impact on your emotional direction. If the first words you speak are words of overwhelm, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I can't deal with this, then your body, your brain, and your energy align with that declaration. Your mind begins to search for evidence to support those words throughout the day, because the brain is always seeking consistency with what you tell it. When your first words are intentional, when they are chosen rather than automatic, something powerful happens inside you. If you wake up and speak strength, I am prepared, I am grounded, I can handle today. Your nervous system takes those words as instruction. Your emotional state rises to meet them. Your mind begins to filter the day through a lens of capability. Challenges do not feel like attacks. They feel like opportunities for expansion. Stress does not feel like drowning. It feels like stretching. Even moments of difficulty land differently because you already set an internal stability that cannot be shaken easily. This is why your morning self-talk is not just motivational fluff. It is psychological priming. It is spiritual orientation. It is emotional intention setting. Think of it like adjusting the thermostat in your home. Once you set the temperature, the environment organizes itself to maintain that climate. If you set yourself to frustration, the smallest inconvenience will feel like confirmation. If you set yourself to gratitude, the smallest blessing will feel significant. If you set yourself to determination, obstacles will feel manageable instead of impossible. Many people carry emotional storms throughout the day without realizing the storm started the moment they opened their eyes. They allowed negative language to plant seeds their emotions kept nurturing for hours. They didn't lose control at noon, they surrendered it at dawn. They didn't become overwhelmed by lunchtime, they allowed the morning to begin with surrender. That tiny unconscious pattern becomes a loop, repeated day after day until people believe that life is simply stressful, heavy, or chaotic. But often it's not life, it's the climate they set with their first words.
Instead, starting your day with a verbal anchor, something that grounds you before the world tries to push you off balance.
Imagine waking up and speaking clarity over confusion.
Today, I move with intention. Imagine waking up and speaking resilience over fear.
I am stronger than what awaits me. Imagine waking up and speaking identity over insecurity. I know who I am, and I walk in that truth. Those words are not magic, but they are alignment. They align your emotions, your mindset, your focus, and even your physiology with the direction you choose. Your first words define your emotional posture. Whether you face the world slumped in defeat or standing in authority, they influence how you interpret situations, how you respond to people, how you handle pressure, and how you treat yourself. They shape your patience, your compassion, your self-belief, and your endurance. They become the internal weather system that follows you from morning to night. And the beauty is that you are in complete control of that moment. No one else gets to choose those first words for you. No one else gets to decide that climate. The day may bring surprises, but the atmosphere you carry into it begins with the voice you choose when you wake. Your inner dialogue can be your enemy or your coach. Choose the coach. Every person wakes up with two voices inside them, one that limits and one that lifts, one that criticizes and one that guides, one that drains and one that fuels. These voices don't come from the outside world. They rise from within, shaped by years of experiences, beliefs, fears, hopes, and memories. And every day, without fail, you pick one to follow. You may not do it consciously, but the choice is always there. The voice you obey becomes the force that shaped your behavior, your confidence, your energy, and your destiny. The inner enemy is subtle. It doesn't roar, it whispers. It tells you to hesitate when you should act. It reminds you of every failure while forgetting every victory. It loves to replay old wounds and old mistakes, keeping you rooted in what has already passed rather than what could still be possible. It exaggerates fear, magnifies insecurity, and minimizes potential. It convinces you that you can't, that you're not ready, that you're not enough, that you're too flawed, too unqualified, too late, too behind. This voice is not interested in your growth, it's interested in your comfort. It wants you to stay exactly where you've always been, because staying still feels safer than stepping into the unknown. But that unknown is the place where your real life waits. The inner coach is different. It doesn't deny your challenges, but it refuses to let them define you. It speaks with clarity, not confusion. It pushes, it encourages, it strengthens, it guides. It tells you that effort matters, that growth is possible, that change can happen, that progress counts even when it's small. It reminds you that you've survived things you once thought you wouldn't. It reminds you of the skills you've sharpened, the battles you've won, the storms you've already walked through. It speaks to the future, not the past. It speaks to your potential, not your pain. And the truth is this: whichever voice you listen to becomes the voice that shapes your identity. If you feed the enemy, you live in fear. If you feed the coach, you live in possibility. The enemy makes you shrink. The coach makes you rise. The enemy makes you silent. The coach makes you bold. The enemy keeps you locked in patterns. The coach pushes you into progress. Your inner dialogue influences your physiology, your emotions, and your choices. Scientists know that the brain responds to internal words almost the same way it responds to external ones. That means the conversations you have with yourself are not imaginary. They are instructions. They tell your nervous system how to react, your energy how to flow, and your behavior how to move. When you tell yourself you can't handle something, your body follows by tightening, shutting down, and becoming overwhelmed. When you tell yourself you are capable, your muscles relax, your focus sharpens, and your actions become more deliberate. Your inner language becomes your internal environment. The inner enemy thrives in silence. If you let your thoughts run on autopilot, the enemy voice tends to dominate because fear is instinctive, but confidence is cultivated. You can't expect the inner coach to speak louder unless you give it attention, practice, and repetition. You must build that voice with intention. You must feed it with truth, consistency, and compassion. You must practice talking to yourself with the same encouragement you offer others. Most people speak with more kindness to strangers than they do to their own souls. They offer advice to friends that they never give themselves. The inner coach must be trained to become your default voice instead of the exception. And choosing the coach doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It means refusing to let negativity narrate your story. It means telling yourself, this is hard, but I can handle it. I've handled hard things before. It means saying, I don't know everything yet, but I'm willing to learn. It means acknowledging your flaws without using them as excuses to stop growing. It means recognizing where you fall short while still believing in your capacity to rise. The inner coach respects the truth, but it also respects your strength. Every breakthrough you want starts with an internal shift. Every goal you have begins with an internal agreement. Every transformation you desire depends on your willingness to silence the enemy and amplify the coach. When your inner coach gets louder, your courage increases, your focus sharpens, your resilience strengthens, your choices improve. And the world around you begins to shift because the world within you has changed first. Identity is shaped from the inside out. Speak who you want to become, not who you've been. Most people walk through life carrying an outdated version of themselves, repeating old narratives like a worn-out script. They speak from wounds instead of vision, memories instead of destiny, and experiences instead of possibilities. They let who they were dictate who they are allowed to become. But identity is not something the past hands you. It is something the present builds and the future calls forth. The person you used to be may have shaped you, but it does not have the authority to define you unless you give it permission. Your identity grows from the inner language you cultivate, the inner truth you choose to reinforce, and the inner vision you allow to speak louder than your history. Every identity begins with a belief, and every belief begins with a conversation. When you speak about yourself, whether silently in your mind or aloud into the atmosphere, you are shaping the blueprint of your self-image. Your brain listens, your emotions respond, your behavior follows. If you continually speak the language of who you've been, I always mess things up, I've never been confident, I'm just not that kind of person, you trap your future inside the prison of your past. You reinforce patterns that no longer serve you. You breathe life into limitations that should have died long ago. And without realizing it, you attach your identity to the weakest parts of your story. But when you begin to speak who you want to become, something inside you shifts. You're no longer borrowing your identity from old failures or old versions of yourself. You are speaking from a place of intention rather than habit. You are shaping your identity around potential instead of memory. This is not pretending, and it's not delusion. It is alignment. It is the act of declaring the direction of your growth before the evidence appears. Just as a seed holds the potential of a tree long before roots break through the soil, your spoken identity holds the future version of you long before the world sees it. Speaking who you want to become is an act of courage. It requires standing in the gap between your current reality and your future self and choosing to believe in what is unfolding rather than what has already happened. It means saying, I am disciplined, even when discipline used to be your downfall. It means saying, I am confident, even if insecurity was once your loudest voice. It means saying, I am capable, even if you spent years doubting your own abilities. Identity grows through repetition. The more you speak it, the more you internalize it. The more you internalize it, the more you act on it. And the more you act on it, the more you become the person you once only described. When you stop identifying with who you used to be, you create space for a new self to emerge. Every transformation begins with an internal declaration. Athletes speak as champions long before they hold trophies. Leaders speak with authority long before anyone follows them. Healed people speak wholeness long before scars fade. Successful people speak vision long before results show. Identity takes root in the unseen long before it shows up in the visible. Your words are the soil that identity grows in. If the soil is filled with doubt, your identity weakens. If the soil is rich with intention, your identity strengthens. Many stay trapped because they keep rehearsing the same story. They define themselves by mistakes, heartbreaks, failures, and disappointments. They say things like, that's just how I am, as if identity is fixed, unchangeable, and carved in stone. But identity is fluid. It is shaped every day. It evolves with every new choice, every new thought, every new spoken truth. You are not bound to the identity that tragedy gave you, or the one insecurity forced on you, or the one fear whispered to you. You can speak a new identity into existence through consistent, intentional inner dialogue. Your inner language must match your desired self, not your former self. If you want to be courageous, speak courage. If you want to be disciplined, speak discipline. If you want to be successful, speak success. If you want to be healed, speak healing. Not because the words themselves magically change your life, but because they change you. They shift your posture, your decisions, your expectations, and your habits. The identity you speak becomes the identity you pursue. The identity you pursue becomes the identity you embody. Identity grows from the inside out, and it always starts with the words you choose to give yourself. Morning self-talk is not motivation. It is far more foundational, far more intimate, far more vital than a momentary spark of inspiration. Motivation is a surge of emotion, quick, loud, and fleeting. It rises fast and fades faster. But morning self-talk is not a surge. It is a setting. It is not a push. It is a positioning. It is the quiet calibration of your inner world before you step into the noise of the outer one. The words you say to yourself in those first moments are not meant to hype you up. They are meant to anchor you, align you, steady you, and center you in truth rather than turmoil. When you treat morning self-talk like motivation, you miss its real purpose. Motivation says, get up and do something exciting. Morning self-talk says, get grounded before you do anything at all. Motivation wants performance. Morning self-talk wants presence. Motivation focuses on action. Morning self-talk focuses on identity, clarity, intention, and mental stability. Anyone can feel motivated for a few minutes, but consistent self-talk builds a mindset that doesn't collapse when the day gets hard. It creates a structure inside you strong enough to handle pressure, disappointment, unexpected challenges, and emotional turbulence. The morning is when your mind is the most open, the most impressionable, and the most easily influenced. You have not yet absorbed stress, distractions, or demands. You are mentally unshaped clay, and the first thoughts you place into your mind become fingerprints on that clay. Morning self-talk is your first act of creation for the day. It shapes how you interpret experiences, how you react to obstacles, how you process conflict, and how you carry yourself into situations that require emotional strength. This is why it cannot be reduced to motivation, because motivation deals with behavior, but self-talk deals with the foundation beneath behavior. Think about the difference between someone who wakes up and says, I need to pump myself up for the day, versus someone who wakes up and says, I need to align my spirit before the day. The first person is chasing a feeling. The second person is establishing a state. Motivation can evaporate the moment something goes wrong. One negative comment, one inconvenience, one unexpected responsibility, and the motivation melts away. But morning self-talk creates resilience. It gives your mind instructions that outlast the ups and downs you will experience. It programs your inner responses long before the world tests them. Motivation might help you start a task, but self-talk helps you become the kind of person who can handle the task in the first place. Self-talk is not about getting excited. It's about getting steady. It's about reminding yourself of who you are so you don't forget it when stress tries to pull you out of alignment. It's about telling your mind where to focus so the world doesn't distract you into confusion. It's about walking into the day with emotional authority, so circumstances don't dictate your mood before you've even had a chance to respond. Morning self-talk sets your internal leadership. You cannot lead your day if you cannot lead your thoughts. You cannot lead your emotions if you cannot lead your language. You cannot lead your decisions if you cannot lead your inner atmosphere. The first voice you hear in the morning is not meant to motivate you. It is meant to train you. It trains your focus to look for possibility instead of problems. It trains your nerves to respond with calm instead of panic. It trains your confidence to rise instead of retreat. It trains your identity to speak louder than insecurity. If you wake up and only seek motivation, you remain dependent on a feeling that is unreliable. But if you wake up and build a discipline of intentional self-talk, you create internal security that doesn't rise and fall with circumstances. You develop a mindset that doesn't need constant emotional stimulation to function. You create a quiet strength that carries you through moments where motivation cannot. Morning self-talk is not about excitement, it is about alignment. It is the first brick laid in the foundation of your day. It is the tone that shapes the emotional climate you walk with. It is the root of your stability, the core of your focus, and the beginning of your inner leadership. It is the practice of speaking truth, strength, clarity, and identity into your spirit before life gives you anything else to react to. When your inner voice rises, fear falls. When courage speaks, destiny responds. Inside every person is a voice that holds immense power, a voice that often stays quiet, not because it is weak, but because fear has been louder for too long. Fear thrives in silence. It grows in the gaps where confidence has not yet spoken. It fills the empty spaces where clarity has not yet taken root. But the moment your inner voice gets volume, the moment the part of you that knows your strength steps forward, fear begins to lose its authority. Fear cannot stand in the presence of a voice that knows its purpose. Fear is loud, but courage is commanding. Fear shouts your limitations, but courage declares your potential. Fear reminds you of every failure, every embarrassment, every insecurity, every moment you felt small. Courage reminds you of the battles you survived, the storms you've endured, the moments you rose when you thought you were finished. Fear tries to keep you trapped in what was. Courage calls you into what could be. And destiny always moves toward the sound of courage, not the sound of fear. Your inner voice is not just a thought pattern. It is your internal navigator, your private compass, the guide that knows who you can become even when you don't yet see it. When that voice rises, when it becomes louder than the doubts that try to silence it, something shifts inside you. Your back straightens, your choices sharpen, your energy aligns. You begin to act from conviction instead of hesitation. Fear might still be present, but it loses its grip because courage has taken the lead. Fear thrives on imagination. It paints worst-case scenarios. It exaggerates what might go wrong. It pulls your mind into places that haven't happened and might never happen. But courage thrives on truth. It pulls you back to your capability, your resilience, your history of overcoming. Courage does not deny difficulty, but it refuses to worship it. It acknowledges risk, but chooses possibility. It sees challenge, but leans into strength. And when your inner voice speaks courage, you signal to destiny that you are ready to move, ready to grow, ready to embrace the next version of yourself. Destiny doesn't respond to passiveness. It responds to motion, intention, and conviction. It responds when you stop letting fear narrate your story. It responds when you take one step forward, even when you still feel uncertain. It responds when you choose to speak life instead of repeating old doubts. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear be the final voice. It is choosing to move with a shaking hand and a steady heart. It is choosing to act even when fear tells you to wait. It is choosing to believe that something greater is pulling you forward. When your inner voice rises, you reclaim authority over your narrative. You stop letting fear write your lines. You stop letting insecurity dictate your choices. You stop letting past failures determine your future outcomes. Instead, you begin to speak from identity, purpose, and truth. You begin to speak words that strengthen you instead of weaken you. You begin to rise from the inside out. Every great breakthrough begins with a moment when the inner voice becomes louder than the inner fear. Courage does not need to shout. It only needs to speak. Its presence alone weakens the hold fear has on your decisions. When you say, I can try, fear loses ground. When you say, I am capable, fear loses strength. When you say, I belong here, fear loses access. When you say, I am built for this, fear loses power. And with each word of courage, destiny hears you. It hears the shift. It hears the readiness. It hears the willingness to grow. Destiny is not something that appears out of nowhere. It is something activated by the words you dare to speak and the steps you dare to take. When courage speaks, doors open, opportunities align, strength awakens. The path becomes clearer, not because the world changed, but because you changed. Fear may knock, but it no longer gets to control the house. Courage becomes the voice that guides your decisions, shapes your actions, and sets your direction. And destiny responds to that voice every time.